Our next story is about the tech startups of Israel. They have something called Silicon Wadi, their version of Silicon Valley. This is Israel's high-tech coastal region, and it may be winding up. Reports say 70% of Israeli startups have begun moving their operations abroad. 70%. What has triggered this exodus? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his judicial overhaul, a very controversial move that has led to months of protests in Israel. Yesterday, part of this plan was pushed through the parliament. It set off another wave of demonstrations, blocked roads, and clashes between police and protesters. Among these protesters are founders of tech startups. They fear the government's policies will drive away foreign investors. And before that happens, these companies want to leave. Our next report tells you more.
Almost every section of Israeli society has joined the demonstrations against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. From students to military reservists to tech startup founders, they have all come together to oppose Netanyahu's judicial overhaul plan. Yesterday, a part of the plan passed in Israel's parliament, the Knesset.
So lawmakers, following are the vote results. 64 in favour, no objections, no abstainers. I hereby determine that Fundamental Law Suggestion, Amendment number 4, had passed in third reading and is written into the Book of Laws. This meeting is adjourned. The meeting will resume at 4 o'clock.
This set off a new wave of protests. But another, more long-term form of pushback is also taking place. The exit of tech startups from Israel. Israel has been called a startup nation in recent years. It has a vibrant tech sector. Cities like Jerusalem, Tel Aviv and Haifa, among others, are home to high-tech industries. It's called Silicon Wadi, a pun on Silicon Valley. Wadi is Arabic for valley. Israel's tech sector is a key growth driver for the country's economy. It generates around 16% of the country's GDP, over 50% of its exports, and provides over 25% of the Israeli government's tax revenue. Over the last 40 years, Israel has become a hub for technological innovation. But now, Netanyahu's overhaul threatens to undo all that progress. A survey was conducted of 734 founders and CEOs of startups and managing directors of venture capital funds. They were asked about the judicial overhaul, why they are against it. This is what many of the country's tech entrepreneurs believe.
We came to the stock exchange because this is the symbol of what this craziness of dictatorship is doing to the Israel economy. It's driving Israel economy down from a startup nation, from being a growth nation, from being only second to the Silicon Valley. We become a third world country. There is no chance for our economy, for our high-tech enterprise, for our growth without democracy, without the same kind of values that the U.S. share, liberalism, equality for all, and freedom for all citizens. And that's exactly what this foreign government is trying to take from us.
All around the region, you find authoritarian governments, from the Gulf monarchies to the south to the Iranian theocracy to the east. It's hard to challenge the boundaries of science and tech if an authoritarian regime can shut you down whenever it chooses. That's why it's important to have access to an empowered judicial system. This is what tech startup founders in Israel believe. It's why they have taken to the streets. And it isn't just the startup founders that feel this way. It's also investors. Democratic checks and balances give investors confidence. It positively affects investor sentiment. So Netanyahu's overhaul plan has led to a flight of capital as well. Recent reports say fundraising by Israeli tech firms fell by 73% to just $3.2 billion in the first half of this year. This is compared to $12 billion raised in the first 6 months of 2022. Now, there has been a global fall in investment, but the global average is 50%, not 73% like in the case of Israel. What's more, investor confidence in Israel's recovery is low. Around 65% of investors believe the US will recover within 6 months. Only 12% of investors believe that about Israel. So confidence in Israel's tech sector is low. and a part of Netanyahu's overhaul has passed. Israel's tech startup founders seem to have had enough, and they've begun jumping ship. 22% of Israeli tech companies say they have moved cash reserves outside of Israel to diversify risk. 8% of startups say they have already started the process of moving their headquarters outside Israel. 29% plan to do so in the near future. This is all part of the survey we mentioned earlier. Additionally, layoffs have already taken place in Israel's tech sector, and the entire startup ecosystem is in chaos. Netanyahu may have won the first round in his fight to overhaul Israel's judicial system, but he risks losing the battle for Israel's future if he continues down this path.